Welcome back. In this session, you will be introduced to food loss and waste. At the end of this session, you should be able to learn where in the food supply chain food loss and waste occurs, understand the SDG indicator dealing with food loss and waste, SDG 12.3, and know examples of case studies showing how to prevent food loss and waste. Food loss and waste is a serious problem. It costs money, it affects our environment, and it affects us, the society. Beyond food loss and waste, environmental issues related to an improper disposal of food waste, there is a moral dimension to the matter. According to the FAO, about 10.7% of the world's population was deemed to be undernourished in 2016. With an increasing world population, and the need for food security, wasting food and losing food along the food chain is not acceptable. It reduces our resources, causes conflict, and costs money. Do you know how much food we lose and waste around the world? We waste about 30% of our produced food worldwide. And that's a critical problem. But where does the loss and waste of food occur? Let's see where our food comes from and where it ends up. In other words, let's have a look into our food supply chain. Here is a simplified model of the food supply chain, showing the example of cow milk that we consume. At the beginning, our food is produced at farms or agricultural lands, which is called the food production. In this example, the milk we drink origins from a dairy farm with cows. The harvested food is then transported to a processing step, where it is prepared for the market. In our case with the milk, it is treated and packaged, ready for sale. At the end, our food is brought to markets and stores, where we, the consumer, can buy it. And here we get our packaged milk. Before we carry on, let's take a moment to clarify some definitions. You might have noticed that we always say food loss and food waste. But what is the difference? Food loss occurs during production and processing. It deals with the supply side of the market. Food waste, on the other side, occurs on the demand side of the supply chain and focuses on retail and consumer. Studies have shown that most food in low and middle income countries is lost in the production and processing steps of the supply chain. This is because simpler technologies are mostly used during production, causing more loss, and a fragmented supply chain for processing thereafter, which causes inefficiencies. Hardly any food is wasted on the consumer side. Per capita, it is about 6 to 11 kilograms per year. In comparison, far more food is wasted at the consumer side in high-income countries, with about 95 to 115 kilograms per capita and year. But food is also lost during processing and production, although better technologies are used with an improved supply chain. One reason being the demand of society for appealing visual appearance and quality of food products, leading to good food being discarded before it even gets to the consumer. The Sustainable Development Goal 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, treats specifically food loss and waste issues. Its 12.3 target states that by 2030, halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels, and reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. As we can see, the target includes all steps of the food value chain, from the consumer and going backwards to processing and production. To measure the impact of initiatives to reduce food loss and waste, indicators 12.3.1 and 12.3.2 were developed. Indicators are an important tool to measure and evaluate the progress worldwide. The indicators are called 12.3.1 food loss and 12.3.2 food waste, covering the full supply chain. Now we understand the serious problem around food loss and waste, where it occurs, and what SDG indicators are available. But what can we do about it? Let's have a look at some case studies. At the supply side, it is important to reduce food losses at any stage of the value chain. An interesting case study was conducted by the FAO. In this study, the mango value chain in India was analyzed, as India is the world's largest mango producer. It was found that one of the critical loss points in the value chain was at the harvesting stage. The largest proportion of food losses occurred at this stage, mainly due to improper harvesting techniques or dropping of the fruits during harvesting. A training of the farmers and introduction of proper harvesting techniques can avoid such losses, thus leading to higher harvests and revenues for the farmers, and less food lost. We can see that a good understanding and analysis of our value chain on the supply side can uncover problems that we sometimes can address with simple solutions. But it is equally important to address the demand side. Here we are dealing with food waste. As already mentioned, food is mostly wasted in high-income countries, on the consumer side. One major solution is awareness raising. What can households do to reduce food waste at home? The UK's Waste and Resources Action Programme, WRAP, launched their campaign and website, Love Food, Hate Waste, sharing with consumers a lot of information. From causes of food waste, environmental impact, economic burden and more. But also, and more importantly, what can be done? You will find recommendations like more careful storage, better portioning when cooking and buying, as well as contacts for donations and recovery programs. It is a very extensive platform that not only applies to the UK but many other countries around the world. Food service providers, such as restaurants, supermarkets or commercial kitchens, are important to include in this discussion. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, released a guide to help commercial food service sites to tackle their food waste problem. The guide provides steps to analyze and address waste food at the premises. Solutions such as improved ways of food purchasing through just-in-time purchasing, only buying what is really needed, making sure food is properly stored and to have storage systems that allow for a first-in, first-out principle, or finding creative ways of food reuse for other meals, given that the food was properly stored and safely handled. For a food service provider, it might seem at first a lot of extra effort. But by being more efficient with their internal food value chain, not only it is good for the environment and food security, it also pays off. A case study from Oregon, at the Intel Corporation cafes in Hillsboro, showed that a food reuse campaign reduced the costs per meal by 13.2%. Additionally, approximately 100 or more metric tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases were avoided. It's a win-win. This is it for food loss and waste. Let's summarize our learnings from this session. We have learned the serious problem of food loss and waste, and that about 30% of our food worldwide ends up being lost or wasted. We had a look at the food supply chain and the actual definition of food loss and waste. We looked further into the difference of food loss and waste between low and middle income countries compared to high income countries. We've learned that SDG 12.3 targets food loss and waste, measuring progress with indicators 12.3.1 and 12.3.2. Finally, we've seen some case studies on how to address and reduce food loss and waste by looking into the value chain in detail and developing awareness campaigns and guidelines for restaurants or supermarkets. Thank you for listening. See you in the next session.